Hi, guys, and welcome back to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. Today, we're going to be talking about the less cute part of the It Girl podcast, maybe leaning a little bit more to the confession side of the podcast, if you will. It is this very interesting idea that I've been sort of experiencing lately, and it really came to the forefront of my brain when my best friend was visiting me in town. And it was this idea of like, we are so together in our lives. We know a lot more who we are. We say a lot more what we mean. We have building boundaries and some confidence and maybe a little bit of clarity and direction and whatnot. But at the same time, it feels like we're heading into that almost 30 marker and dreams feel unfulfilled. And maybe there are some expectations that life was going to be different by the time you were closer to 30. And that can be in so many different areas of your life. I think that can be with your friendships, it could be with your career, it could be with your relationship, it could even be the relationship with yourself. And it just feels like something is missing or just didn't live up to the expectation you maybe set as a child for yourself. By the time I'm 30, I'll be married, or by the time I'm 30, I'll, be making a huge salary. We've set these expectations and not all of them are being met. So you're in this weird juxtaposition of that. You have never been happier because you are really figuring out how to maybe function in the world. And some part of your life feels so complete and can feel so established. And you've learned so much growing up to get to this point that you're just settled maybe in who you are. But at the same time, you're dealing with the loss of maybe not achieving an expectation you would hope to have. So, in this episode, we are going to dive into why your late 20s is the time when you have never been happier and never been more depressed. Welcome to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. I'm your host, Marley Freygang, and I'm here to help you filter out all the bullshit and become the next It Girl. This podcast explores the reality of what it really takes to make it out there. As it turns out, it is way less Instagrammable than I thought it was going to be. I'm still very much a work in progress, but there's simply nothing else I'd rather be doing than chasing my dreams. So let's learn from my mistakes and work together to achieve our dreams with more confidence, clarity, and direction. Let's get after it. Your late 20s can be a happy time because I think in at least one stage of life, you're kind of leaving the internship or starter job phase. You're not so new to being out in the world on your own. It's a little bit more figured out now. You've been doing it maybe for a little bit, and you're just a little less bamboozled by adulting. It feels a little bit easier to just be. Also, not to mention, you now have so much experience of your growing up years and college years. I think people really start to get deeper in their friendships because you're no longer in schools. And, schools have forced you to be around certain people, and maybe your job forces you to be around certain people too. But the social aspect really starts to change. And I find that people really have deeper friendships because they've learned what they don't like in friends and won't be friends with people that won't gel with you as much. And that can just make all your relationships feel so much deeper and real versus when maybe you were younger, it could feel very forced and kind of just a situation of circumstance that you were friends with people. And now that you're older, you also really don't have the time of the bullshit of being friends or in a relationship with somebody that wastes your time. Or at least I hope, learning to stand on those legs of boundaries. And I think that really helps to make relationships show up more authentically and ends up making you much happier in your life because you're just a little bit more comfortable with who you are and the circle you're in. Also, potentially, you're through an opening phase of your career. It feels like those, shitty unpaid internships, or maybe in the past, maybe you know that you can get paid a little bit more for your work. Maybe you're starting to really shift out what you will do and won't do for work, or what kind of environment you will or won't work. So your career can also really start to feel like it has some amazing upticks because, again, it's just not so new to you anymore. And all of that can make you feel just happier in life, that you're no longer in the entry level phase, or hopefully it's coming to an end, and at least you've gained some skills along the way of what will work for you or what you're maybe not interested in doing. Your career just maybe doesn't feel as completely new as it once were. And then, there's late 20s is literally an adult. Like, you have gained an insane amount of independence. And that can feel so free to be on your own and know who you are and start to really form your own, what I like to do with my own time or what I don't like to do with my own time. And again, I feel like late 20s, you really start to gain the sense of self. And from what I've heard, that only gets better the older you get. And this is, at least for me, the first time I really feel like I have experienced that idea of my identity is who I am, and I don't have to shape myself completely to be whatever the standards are, even though I will acknowledge that sometimes, like, shaping yourself to what's in or it is also fun. But I think that's why we feel so happy in our late 20s. Like, for myself, an area of my life that's like very figured out that I didn't expect it to be so figured out by now is definitely like my relationship. I didn't really think that I would be where I am now in my life and in my career and be so happy. And it wasn't something I was looking for. What I'm saying is, some part of your life feels figured out. It doesn't feel like all circles are completely open. It feels like certain ones sort of have, like, I don't want to say an end point or a settling point, but like it just feels like they're on a good loop, they're on a good track. And at the same time, that's why I think we start to notice the open loops or open tracks kind of starting to weigh on ourselves. So let's flip the coin here and talk about why in your late 20s you've never felt more depressed. I think people feel really depressed in their late 20s because they're still dealing with uncertainty. And I think there is this idea that when you are in your younger years, things are taken care of for you, and the life is kind of start, go, stop, start, go, stop. Like, even like you turn in your homework and it's done. And when you are in your 20s, late 20s, there is always something. Your car gets bumped, the house gets broken into, you can't find your tax ID number. There's just always these things that feel uncertain. And it just feels like there's always going to be things adding to the to-do list. There's also uncertainty of when those tracks and loops that we were previously talking about will close, because it feels like you could be grinding away so hard at your career. And it feels like you're not getting there. And that starts to just feel like, is this amount of work going to take me nowhere? At the same time, you could be constantly dating and feeling like you're never going to meet the person you want to be with. And this uncertainty can feel super unsettling. And again, I think 30 is a very scary number, that people make it very scary, that by the time you're 30, things need to be figured out, and or have this pressure to be settling down or succeed. And the idea of like, by the time you're 30, you should be 100% be able to support a household and a family and do all these things and know exactly what you're doing and only be working up and just be a master at everything. And there is just so much pressure because it feels like you're starting to really chase the clock of life. And it can seem so intense and it can seem like such BS at the same time, but also very real. There's just so much pressure to have success right now before you hit the next defining age, if you will. And I think that can make you feel really lost because I think when we're children, in high school or whatever, middle school or younger, there are certain things we daydream about or like, they say by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be married. By the time I'm 30, I'm going to be a famous actor or whatnot. We set up these expectations, and when they are not met by that time point, we start to feel really lost and not sure if we're doing the right things, or if we should stay on this path. And also you really start to mourn the loss of, oh, I didn't get those things in that time, or I might never get those things, which is not something I love to say, but it is very possible that, you will not get everything you want in this life. I don't love that at all. But I think at this point, you start to realize that it is not all a Disney movie ending and it's not all going to work out completely perfectly all the time, and there's a lot of pressure to have a relationship. And I know that can be a real struggle for people because there's this idea by the time you're 30, you should have kids and a home and own it and da 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 da. And again, if that's something you set up for yourself when you were a child, saying by this time I will have these things, again, you will start to mourn the fact that you're not having it. And I think in moments like that, what's super important is to really have some good self-care. Like I'm on a kick with the Alfred's matcha. Oh my God. I probably own half the stores by now. I will get like an Alfred's matcha every day because it just makes me feel like I'm ready to do it and ready to work or whatnot. And you have to really find whatever your Alfred's matcha is and care for yourself because you're kind of going through a mourning period of what you thought your life would be like, and it might not exactly look like that. Not to mention that, and I don't know this is true for everyone, but this is my personal experience. This is a point where I have really started to notice the people around me, my family and friends, families, and others start to really have family members aging and getting, older. And it's another jarring pill that like it's not always going to be so safe and sound and perfect, but maybe right now it is, but things do start to change and it really clicks you into reality that it's not always so picture perfect. So how do you deal with having both of these conflicting, confusing, overwhelming experiences, sometimes in the same day? How do you feel the most happy you've ever felt and the most depressed you've felt at the same time? Like I said, I think it's really important to take care of yourself in these moments. I always talk about putting your own life vest on first. You're still learning to build self-boundaries and self-love. It could be, I need to go out tonight because I haven't gone out and seen my friends and I need to do that. Or, it can equally look as much like I need to stay in because my social battery is drained. I think this is a little bit of a time to be selfish in your self-care. I don't think it's always necessarily a time to be selfish because I think there's a lot that you're trying to achieve personally, career-wise, or relationships or family-wise at this time. And those moments are here and precious. So I don't 100% believe it's a time to be 1,000% selfish, but I do think it is a very important time to put self-care at a high level. And also recognize that you are mourning something that you don't have, and starting to accept that or share that with other people. You'll see that there's something maybe in their life that they are mourning an expectation of. But at the same time, we're the youngest you'll ever be and the oldest you'll ever be in this moment. So, keep going at the thing. There's still so much time to figure things out. If you asked a financial investor, they'd probably still say this is a good time to grow wealth, which means you have plenty of time to get to wherever you want to be with your life and career too. It is possible, but seeking support from family and friends, self-care, and trying to refrain as much as you can from negative thoughts and lean into yeah, you're the smartest you've ever been. You have the most boundaries you've ever had because you're in a different place from when you were a child. So relish in that maybe a little bit on the days where the contradiction is large. Dealing with honestly both at the same time. I think it is really okay to be upset and disappointed and frustrated that you don't have the things you wanted in your life. Like for me, I really did not think I would be as old as I am and not have as much TV and film experience as I do. I really thought my acting career would be in a different place than it is. But at the same time, I'm not throwing in the towel. I've never felt more confident as an actor. I've never been happier as a physical craft part of my acting. So I think that, they can both coexist. Maybe we don't have to shut one off for the other. The silver lining of never being happier, because also I feel like it's such a great time I have so much self-expression and clarity of who I am. Not always, but in moments. I don't filter. I don't care as much as I used to. I'm not saying I don't completely. But you've gained so much resilience in this time because you've dealt with all the confliction and, triumphs too. You've proven that you're going to keep going after the things, that you want, your its, if you will. And that's something to be proud of. You've made it this far in your career or your education or your relationship, whatever, or even just setting boundaries. And that really shows true resilience. You've become so much more self-aware. You've had to cut maybe bad friendships or relationships out and have learned so much about yourself and how you will treat others and how you don't want to be treated. And also, it is a great time to gain a lot of empathy for people older, younger, and even your age, because I think your awareness of what was, great about maybe your upbringing or bad about your upbringing is on the forefront of your brain, but is also, you see what it's like when people maybe older than you, what they're doing with their lives now and how you want to continue to grow. So it's a great time to also grow some empathy. Like I said, I have never felt, honestly, even though I do go up and down, it's not a settled line, more confident in the things I want. I have never felt closer to the things I want, almost to the point sometimes that it literally scares me that I think I could be so close, for real. But at the same time, I feel so far away from it. And having both those things at the same time is just an uncomfortability that you have to fight through in order to get what you want at the end of the day. And I think that is the key. Is it's just another thing to overcome this uncomfortability of never being happier and never being more depressed. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you next Tuesday. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the show.